Hello everyone, this is Ryan Smith, creator of Unix United, and I'm here with the very first video of a podcast series about Unix United and the many aspects of its development. I'm going to give a quick overview of just what Unix United is and what it's about. Unix United was a story that I came up with all the way back in 2003 or 2004, somewhere around there. And originally it was about 8 mice. They were all brothers, and they were based off a game called Rat Poker, which was developed in the 90s by Microsoft. It was part of a collection of games called Microsoft Entertainment Pack, the puzzle collection. And there was a game called Rat Poker, and in the game were these rats that you'd have to form into different colored patterns, like poker hands, for instance. You have 4 of a kind, 5 of a kind, etc. And what you would do with it is you would line them up and you would score points. That was the inspiration that led to the very, very first designs of the characters, and they look much, much different back then than they do now. They went through an evolutionary design change. I remember during my mid-teen years, 14, 15, 16, I went through some major design changes, and I was really, really hesitant. I didn't want to give it up because I was so endeared to the design that I currently had. But over time, the design changed, and you have the mice as they appear now. Some of my early influences on my artistic style were, of course, Rat Poker. There's an animated TV series made by a company called Nelvana, they're Canadian, called Redwall. It was a sort of like a woodland creature story, a saga about this warrior or something that goes off and conquers the bad guy and everything. But it's the artistic style that from the TV animated series that influenced much of my current artistic style. Next up is the audio aspects of Unix United. Early on, I was exposed to a lot of video games, and particularly a lot of games that were not obscure per se, but they were not like Super Mario or Sonic or anything like that. They were sort of like on a middle ground. Games like Might and Magic 6, Heroes of Might and Magic 2, there is Thief the Dark Project. And those games were an early influence on what would become my audio engineering style. I do sound effects, I do ambient tracks, and I do a tiny bit of music, but mostly the audio aspect is the sound design and the ambient track design. And those are going to be featured in the game. I'm going to compose the audio of the game, much like Eric Brosius, the guy who made Thief into what it is, through the sound design that he used in the Thief series up until Thief 4. That he wasn't there to produce the audio for Thief 4, but he was the primary influence on my style of composing audio, and you're going to see that in Unix United. Going back to the characters, I would have to say that out of the 8 characters that I originally had, the 8 brothers, 3 of them still have their original names, and they are Neil, Daniel, and I believe Andrew. But instead of having 8 brothers, there are 5 brothers and 1 sister. The sister is named Miranda, and she's the first character you play as in the current version of the alpha demo that I have. So it's called version 0.0.22. It's in a very, very early alpha. There's a lot of things to iron out, including combat mechanics and stuff, but the game functions. It's not broken. There are no game-breaking bugs that are likely to happen. So what happens is, the story goes in the development of Unix United, what happened is that the 6 mice, yes, they are mice by the way, they're all siblings. They prepared to go to a fantasy world called Gypto. They were raised in a contemporary family and society and a world even. Their homeworld is more of like modern day Earth. And what happens is they enter a portal to go on a little excursion trip to a fantasy world called Gypto. Something happens to the portal that they used in their house, their secret portal. And the portal malfunctions and scatters them across random places of the world called Gypto. And what happens is they have to find their way back home, but also they have to find each other first. Now, once they find each other, that does not necessarily mean that the mission is over. There's some other stuff they have to do, but at least when they find each other, they'll know that they're all right and everything. And what happens is they get scattered across different parts of Gypto, and they each play a separate story. They have different stories that take place from their own perspective, and what happens along the way. It's an RPG, by the way. It's developed in an engine called RPG Maker VX Ace. What happens along the way is that you gather party members, like you do it in Final Fantasy, except every one of the 6 mice, they have their own parties. They gather up their own allies. And it's going to be set up eventually where you can swap party members, including potentially, if you have all 6 mice confirmed, like there's going to be a point where let's say Neil meets Miranda and he says, oh hey, there you are, you're still alive and blah blah blah. And Miranda is going to have her own party, Neil is going to have his, but they're both able to join each other's party if the player decides to. They change party members at an inn or any kind of shelter. Most likely an inn. But what happens is they can actually swap party members, so it's possible for Neil and Miranda to be in the same party. This is also true for finding the other siblings as well. And eventually, when all 6 mice have been found, players will actually be able to play as the entire family. And the ultimate quest, the entire purpose of their adventure is to get back home. But not before they each travel in different parts of the world, of course, but they also discover things along the way, like not just side quests, but they have a separate story to tell. And the game's music and sound design change. They have stylistic changes depending on which character you're playing as. At this point in time, I am now moving on to developing the alpha itself. The current state of the map in the current alpha is just like a test level. It's going to be Miranda's starting location later, called Kurlock Castle, and she's been there before, as you'll see in the cutscene when you enter a certain door. But each of the 6 mice will have their own starting location, and players will get to choose which character they want to play as first. There is a poll going on right now on the development thread, which I'll post in a link in the description, that people can decide where or who should be the starting character for the tutorial level. Who should be featured in the tutorial? All 6 mice will be there, but who will the player be able to play as? Who's the one that gets to be played by the player? And after that, when the tutorial is finished, when the player learns the basics of gameplay, they would get to choose which character to start out on. And they can change parties, they can actually change stories, perspectives, as they, when they visit a tavern, an inn, or anything like that, any kind of shelter that they can stay at, while the other 5 siblings are taking their turn in the story from their own point of view. And that's what's different about this game versus, let's say, a Final Fantasy game. The story doesn't change at set points. It changes when the player wants. For example, in Final Fantasy VIII, you had moments where you'd switch over to a separate party, but that would only be like a certain point in the story, and then you'd revert back to the main cast. In Unique United, you can swap sides anytime you want. So with that in mind, every party, every one of the 6 mice will have their own party and followers or allies that they gather along the way. Now at some point they will be able to interchange those allies with each other, but not before all six mice have all 6 party members slots filled, and there are going to be a maximum of 6 party members per side, per sibling. But the nice thing about it is you can choose as many or as little as you want. You just can't go over 6. You can even sort out different people and party members into different parties. That's going to be a feature later. But as for now, the game is in a very rough state. There are no game-breaking bugs. There are just some other things that need ironing out, and the game is going to take a lot of changes in direction before it finally gets into a stable beta. So for the next few months, expect there to be a lot of changes, possibly fundamental changes. And in the next podcast, I will most likely cover combat, how it functions, and what type of skills and mechanics go into the combat system. Thank you all for watching, or listening in this case, and I will see you later.